The occult science of magic has been concealed from us under the shadow of ancient mysteries. Magism was the science of Abraham, Ophiuchus, Confucius, and Zoroaster. It was this science that was engraven on tablets of stone by Enoch and Trismegistus. Moses then revealed them, and this is the meaning of the word reveal. Magicians have gone under many names and interpretations throughout the centuries, including ghosts, goblins, demons, leprechauns, elves, fairies, and in Islam they are known as jinn, popularised in the English language as genies. Most recently they have also been referred to as extraterrestrials. The Kabbalah is supposedly the ancient wisdom transmitted by the fallen angels, referred to in the Bible as the sons of God, who interbred with female descendants of the cursed Cain. The Bible says that after Abel was unjustly slain by his brother, Adam and Eve had a third son, Seth. Therefore there were two branches that developed to populate the earth. A righteous generation descended from Seth, and another branch descended from Cain, which filled the earth with violence and corruption. According to legend, the race of Cain intermarried with the sons of God in the Bible. However, the story is mentioned only briefly, and fails to state that the sons of God intermarried with the sons of Cain. Their offspring were a race of giants, referred to as the Anakim. The corruption that filled the earth by the descendants of the sons of God angered God, who caused the flood to destroy humanity, all except Noah and his family, who survived by building the ark. According to the Bible, Noah had survived the flood with his 3 sons. The myth of the dying God would come to pervade not only the mystical systems of antiquity, but which would transform Western religion and philosophy. Typically, the dying God was a usurper who supplants the original creator God by vanquishing the dragon, who was the leader of a race of giants. The dying god's spouse was Venus, the morning star, though the two were seen as dual aspects of the same deity. The Latin name for Venus is Lucifer. The dying god was universally regarded as the god of the underworld, where he ruled over the spirits of the dead. As the Israelites were liberated from Egypt, God commanded them to conquer the land of Canaan. The frightful appearance of the Anakim are described in the account of the 12 spies of the Bible, filled the Israelites with terror when they encountered them in the land of Canaan, and were descendants of the Anakim. Once they were to conquer the land of the Canaanites, the Israelites were clearly warned to refrain from the pagan cult of the dying God. According to Deuteronomy, when you enter the land the Lord God has given you, do not learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their sons or daughters in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritualist, or who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Because of these detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. However, it was in Canaan that the Israelites adopted the worship of the dying god Baal, which would underlie the beliefs of the Kabbalah. Baal was one of the trinity of gods worshipped among the Canaanites. Baal came to represent the sky god, who fertilizes the goddess, Mother Earth, to bring forth life. Thus Baal was often symbolized as an erect phallus, in the form of a pillar. The Israelites persisted in their paganism. Political differences divided them between the kingdom of Israel in the north, comprised of 10 tribes, and Judah in the south, comprised of 2 remaining tribes, Judah and Benjamin. Finally, according to the Bible, because of their repeated excesses, the Israelites were punished by being carried away into exile from the end of the 8th century BC to the beginning of the 6th. The Jews of ancient Palestine were attacked by the Assyrians and deported to Mesopotamia, were brought to Babylonia by Sargon II in 727. They consulted fortune tellers and used sorcery and sold themselves to evil, arousing the Lord's anger, and because the Lord was angry, he swept them from his presence. Only the tribe of Judah remained, but even the people of Judah refused to obey the commands of the Lord their God. He punished them by handing them over to their attackers until they were destroyed. Finally, between 598 and 596 BC, Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem, sacked the famous Temple of Solomon, and deported much of the remaining population to Babylon. The Jews would eventually remain in Babylon for half a century, until their release in 538 BC, when nearly 50,000 of them returned to Jerusalem. Their practices were described by Diodorus of Sicily, a Greek historian of 80 to 20 BC. Being assigned to the service of the gods, they spent their entire life in study, their greatest renown being in the field of astrology, but they occupied themselves largely with soothsaying as well, making predictions about future events, and in some cases by purifications, in others by sacrifice. Once in Babylon, a faction of heretical Jews insisted that the covenant was binding forever, and that, despite the temporary punishment, because they were God's chosen people, they eventually would be restored to the promised land and be appointed rulers of humanity at the advent of their awaited Messiah. This interpretation was then assimilated to the heretical worship of the dying God, in which the Israelites had persisted for nearly 1,000 years, and for which they were condemned. With the further addition of Babylonian astrology and magic, this new interpretation of Judaism would become known as the Kabbalah. Then in 538 BC, Babylon was conquered by the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, 600 to 530 BC. Cyrus released the Jews from captivity, after which many returned to Palestine, where they began work on building the Second Temple of Jerusalem, to replace the First Temple, which was destroyed in 586 BC. The early Kabbalists were known to the ancient world as magi. The modern word for magic derives from the ancient magi. Though the magi had continued the magical traditions, they were primarily recognised as specialists in necromancy, that is, divination by summoning the spirits of the dead. Though communion with evil spirits was strictly forbidden in the Orthodox version of the faith, people who were hostile to the Orthodox community called them sorcerers or deva worshippers or devil worshippers. The Bible makes numerous condemnations of the ancient Israelites sacrificing their children to Baal or Moloch. Tradition depicted Moloch as a bronze statue heated with fire into which the victims were thrown.
2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato set down a dialogue called the Critias. He recounted the story of an ancient Greek poet and statesman named Solon. Solon had journeyed to Egypt in search of wisdom to help the government of his beloved Greece. The Greeks had been beset with factions and troubles, so Solon took counsel from the priests of the city of Sais. An old priest told him, "O Solon, Solon, you Greeks are never anything but children. There is no old opinion handed down among you, nor any science that is white with age." The old priest then proceeded to tell him the story of the lost city of Atlantis. In the centuries that would follow, scholars and researchers have debated whether Plato's Atlantis was intended to be an account of real history or simply an allegorical myth. Some even suggest that Atlantis was really the antediluvian world, the wicked society destroyed by the wrath of God in the great flood of Noah. In the 20th century, Plato's account was further supported by Masonic philosopher Manly P. Hall. Hall claimed that Atlantis had once been a vast and mighty empire that extended to the whole world, a philosophic commonwealth of nations that one day was destined to be rebuilt. But who would rebuild it? And exactly who was Manly P. Hall?
Manly P. Hall was probably the most highly esteemed occultist and Freemason of the 20th century.
He understood the secrets of the ages long before he ever joined the Masons.
Was really the foremost authority on the occultist side of Freemasonry, the deep, dark side of Freemasonry, the one that most Masons never ascend to.
I can't really think of anybody close to him.
Manly P. Hall was one of the leading people within this whole other world that we talk about.
Hall authored over 200 books and is said to have given some 8,000 lectures on ancient philosophy. He is perhaps most remembered for his contribution to the mysterious Brotherhood of Masonry. Upon his death in 1990, the Scottish Rite Journal, a Masonic publication, noted that he was often called, quote, Masonry's greatest philosopher. Among his teachings was that contained in Masonry and all the secret orders was the ancient wisdom of lost Atlantis. Hall wrote that for more than 3,000 years, secret societies had been laboring to create a background of knowledge necessary to the establishment of an enlightened democracy among the nations of the world. According to Hall, these societies could be traced back to ancient Egypt and had for centuries known of a secret place hidden from the eyes of common men, a place that would one day be revealed. In the 17th century, as settlers were colonizing the New World, Sir Francis Bacon, the leader of secret societies in England, set down his classic work, The New Atlantis. While archaeologists and treasure hunters have searched the globe looking for the lost continent, 400 years ago, Bacon, like many of his contemporaries, believed that Atlantis was America itself.
Well, Bacon, to me, was really fundamental in the American colonizational scheme and its connection to the New Atlantis concept. He was trying to lay a foundation for what could be accomplished in the New World.
While the Atlantis of Plato was a mighty empire known for the philosophy of its kings, Bacon would write of a nation governed by scientific achievement, filled with marvels and wonders never before seen.
Bacon was talking about this new nation, talking about submarines, talking about unimaginable weapons of war, talking about flying machines and tall buildings. How did he come into possession of this knowledge?
Did Francis Bacon outline the course of the New World before its time? And if so, by what power was he inspired to do so? While there are no states or cities that bear his name, his mysterious influence has compelled some to call him the real and true founder of America.
His founding of America was really through other people who were following his work, following the program he'd laid out.
Bacon was the head of Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism.
He had a huge influence through being the chief of the Rosicrucian fraternity at the time. He had a huge influence on the birth of modern Freemasonry, and many of those Rosicrucians actually went into Freemasonry at that time to lift it up to its new level. And Freemasonry has a major influence on the founding of America.
While many of the early settlers came to work the land for the cause of religious freedom, there were with them secret societies who came to the New World with another agenda.
Secret societies came to America shortly after the Pilgrims arrived, and they were sent by a man named Sir Francis Bacon.
You get this very strange mixture of people, many of whom understood even then the advantage, spiritually and otherwise, to having secret orders.
Unless you understand the influence of the occult societies on the development of America, on the establishment of America, upon the course of America, why you get completely lost studying our history.
And they were the ones through which this work was being put into operation in England, in Europe, and eventually in America and the world.
So that America then could be used to lead the world into the philosophic empire. You understand that America was founded by Christians as a Christian nation. However, there were always those people on the other side who wanted to use America use our military power and our financial power to establish enlightened democracies throughout the world and restore lost Atlantis.
Yeah, maybe Bacon had it right. Maybe Atlantis is not something yet to occur, but maybe it's occurring right now in America.
In his lifetime, Sir Francis Bacon referred to himself as the herald of a new age. He promoted a new universal order for the whole world. Can this be what early American founders referred to with the words Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages? And does this vision affect America today?
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.